The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so.
Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
You're listening to episode 84 of The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. I'm Dom Bettinelli. This is a special episode where Jimmy Akin, Father Corey Stika, and I discuss the second season of the 6 short streaming episodes called Short Treks. These episodes aired on CBS All Access, starting in October 2019 and wrapping up the second week of January 2020. As a special bonus for our patrons who provide financial support to the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows we do at StarQuest, we made these discussions available exclusively to them right after those short treks aired. But now we've bundled them up into one episode and are making them available to you, the rest of our audience, now. If you'd like to support the Secrets of Star Trek and get access to cool exclusive bonus content like this, please visit sqpn.com/give. Now please enjoy the show. This first short trek, called Q&A, is 13 minutes and 42 seconds long, so about a quarter of a regular episode. And it features
about a third, actually, when you take out commercials.
Although,
Well, I guess it varies these days because the episodes have variable length since they're on All Access.
Right. That's what I was thinking. So, so it could, So it's 13 minutes and 42. It features Spock's first day on the Enterprise. He's beaming aboard for the very first time.
From somewhere
in a very strange looking transporter room. Looked like a corridor. It was a kind of an odd looking transporter room. So it features Ethan Peck playing Spock again, and Rebecca Romaine returning to the role as number 1. This is Captain Pike's Enterprise. This predates pretty much everything we've seen so far. This takes place before the first season of Discovery and everything. So her name is Lieutenant Commander Una. She's the first officer. Una, she is number 1.
Exactly. They're still being coy about, is that her real name? They had Captain Pike refer to her as Una in the season finale of season 2 of Discovery, but it didn't end up in the closed captioning. And so one of the producers actually later confirmed, yes, he did refer to her as Una, which is a name that she's been given in some of the spinoff literature, although the spinoff literature is inconsistent about what number 1's name is. And there's even a debate about, is that her name or is it just another nickname? Is it based on the fact she's called number 1?
Right.
Now, to kind of put a spin on that, though, the next scene, as Spock steps on the transporter pad, the next scene, it shows her drafting a memo on this iPad. I mean, this pad, and it lists her name as Lieutenant Commander Una.
Yeah.
First Officer Helmsman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and they actually show the pad, show the text she's reciting. So
it's sort of, on the paperwork anyway, it seems to be that's her name. We don't know whether she's human or not. I kind of get the sense that she's not from Earth, that there's enough interesting about her that there's something else.
And I wonder with the rumored and wanted, I can definitely say wanted Pike Enterprise future series. Yeah. That might be something they'll explore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I like when Spock beams in, he's like, Ensign Spock reporting for duty, and she's no need to shout, Mr. Spock. That calls back to Leonard Nimoy's early performances as Spock.
That was awesome.
He got the cadence down perfectly on that too. Just very much the Nimoy cadence.
Yeah, I was really pleased that they did that, and it was a really good callback. I was like, no need to shout, Ensign Spock. she demands that he, as they're walking away from the transport room, she notices he hasn't asked any questions yet, and she demands that he ask her and everyone else he meets as many questions as he can, which, telling Spock
as a science officer.
Right. So they get on board the turbo lift, and I have to say, why is there so much empty space, interior space of the Enterprise?
Yeah, this is inconsistent with the plans that I ordered back in the 1970s. There's no way the Enterprise has that much empty space inside of it.
That's before the remodel.
The Franz Joseph...
the minor refit.
Yeah, technical manual that I had as a kid. Yeah. But it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's not a blimp. It doesn't need all this empty space in it. Like it's just a waste.
Yeah.
Make the ship smaller then. Anyway.
For whatever reason, they like this design of the turbo shafts basically being roller coasters within the ship.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know why they're so enamored by that design of the turbo shafts.
Right.
We could kind of excuse it on Discovery because we didn't have a frame of reference for what Discovery is supposed to be like on the inside, but it just doesn't seem to fit on the Enterprise.
Right. This is giant open space.
I want to comment on when number one tells Spock to ask questions to the point of becoming annoying. She says, we're going to reach the turbo lift in 30 seconds or whatever, go. And his first question is a reasonable one. What is your name, sir?
Right.
And she dodges it. Yeah. You can call me number one.
And on board, when the turbo lift stops, there's this awkward silence, or you think it could be awkward or should be awkward, but people don't talk in elevators. And of course,
I have observed that.
Yeah. Of course, the rest of the episode is constant talking, so it's kind of funny. What is remarkable to me is how Spock is able to come up with good questions at the drop of a hat, and number one is able to come up with relevant answers at the same drop of a hat. So that's a fun bit of this.
One of the things they're doing in this episode is playing on the similarity of these two characters, because originally in the original pilot for Star Trek, number one was the intellectual, emotionless character, and Spock was just an alien.
Right.
And eventually, when Majel Barrett's character didn't end up in the regular show, they transferred the intellectual aloofness to Spock. And so we ended up with a situation where number one and Spock are actually very similar characters. And they're playing on that in this short trek. There's one moment where both of them at the same moment say Spock's tagline, fascinating.
Right. Right. Yeah, it is interesting. And well, I mean, kind of move on to some of the questions. One of the things he asks is, what are the three most salient facts about Captain Pike? Another excellent question, given that he's an ensign, fresh out of the academy, newly assigned to the ship, knowing what's and a bridge officer, knowing the captain, the important information about the captain would be helpful. So, what does she say? 1, his capacity for hearing out another point of view is only exceeded by his willingness to change his own. 2, even though he is the most heavily decorated fighting captain in Starfleet, he views resorting to force as an admission of failure. 3, he is utterly unsentimental except when it comes to horses, at which Spock says he's sentimental when it comes to large terrestrial herbivorous animals.
Yeah, and that last one it plays on the fact that he does have a soft spot for horses, as we saw in the original Star Trek pilot. But I don't find the claim that he's utterly unsentimental to be reflective of Captain Pike, especially not as he's played by the current actor.
Right, or even the original actor. I mean, in the Cage, he was totally riven by his emotions about being broken up by the losses they'd suffered in a recent mission. I mean, he was ready to quit. Right. So I found that strange too. But it does sound like, in some ways, it sounds like she's describing Picard as well. That sort of it's a lot like Picard. He's hearing out other points of view,
down to the horses.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Other points of view, heavily decorated, but doesn't really like to fight, that sort of thing. So I thought that was interesting.
One thing they do to show how similar these characters are is they start finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
There's another question that he asks, which is like, does the ship use this type of glucose replicator or this type of glucose replicator operating system? And she says, actually, we use the Una operating system that combines the best elements of both. And he says, your name is Una. And she says, that is not a question.
Well, she says it's the Una Matrix.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's both. It was both the reference to her name and Unimatrix Zero from the board.
Yeah.
I was waiting for an Una Paloma Blanca reference, but it never came, so I'm disappointed.
I also really like how Spock directly challenges the Prime Directive,
right,
and accuses it of being impractical and immoral.
Yes, unethical,
not ethical, illogical, and morally indefensible.
I love that.
She goes, for your sanity, just stop that line of reasoning right now.
Right, she says for his sanity, because apparently she probably agrees to some degree to some point, but like just it's best not to worry about that.
Just don't go there.
He also asks if she thinks the universe is a giant simulation, which is also another Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World topic we brought up.
And I like Spock as here he's willing to entertain design arguments for the universe.
Yep. And finally, Spock's questions get heavy even for her. Like the philosophy ones are just like, okay, that's enough of that. And they contact the engineer Upjohn, who
he backs off to, do you like eggplant?
Yes, that's the question. Do you like eggplant? So the engineer that's trying to fix the turbolift, her name is Upjohn, and apparently she has a Scottish accent because all the best Starfleet engineers are Scottish. That's just a fact.
Apparently so.
Number one asks Spock a question. She asked whether he was smiling when he beamed aboard. She thought he was smiling, and she advises him, which is interesting, that if he aspires to command, he needs to keep his freaky to himself. What does she mean by his freaky?
Well, her point is that most people are not used to Vulcans displaying emotions, and it will be disorienting to them if they see someone who is a Vulcan appears to be Vulcan displaying emotions. And so if he wants to move up in the chain of command, he needs to keep that to himself. So that he doesn't disturb people and get a rep for being the crazy Vulcan.
Well, she act normal. She even mentioned that she found it a little bit disturbing when she first saw it.
Yeah.
And then he says, as he claimed in the original series, I have no desire to command, and she calls him out on that using a word that begins with B.
Yes.
And I thought about that. It's actually kind of fair because he does end up as a captain. He's captain of the Enterprise after Kirk is.
And first officer
when it's a training vessel. Yeah. The reason she cites for knowing that he actually wants command is he spent 2 years at the Academy under a brutal professor taking quantum stochastic combat modeling, which she says nobody would do if they're not wanting to command.
Right.
And now quantum stochastic calculus is a real thing. But apparently by the 23rd century, they've incorporated it into combat modeling. Quantum, refers typically to a quantum is a discrete unit of something, and it's often applied in physics to the smallest units of matter and energy. Stochastic means random, and things that are randomly selected. So this is apparently some kind of quantum random combat modeling for the type of combat they have in the 23rd century.
It connects back to the memo that number one was writing as Spock beamed over. They actually showed it. So of course, Star Trek geek, I took a picture of it with my phone. Basic model: the effective use of the photon torpedoes is applied to the quantum stochastic models of Salvo analysis, she obviously could say it better than I can, requires an in-depth analysis of the accuracy of Starfleet's most advanced torpedoes, tactical weapons, gathering intelligence into the effectiveness of both offensive and defensive firepower is essential to Starfleet survival, highlighting the urgent need for the kind of quantum stochastic models of Salvo analysis. And then that's when he beams over.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. But in any event, she tells him, if you want to command, you're going to have to keep your freaky to yourself. And he says, in essence, I've been doing that she says, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
And he says, I've been doing that all my life. And yes, it is. And she says, I know. And indicates she's hiding her freaky too.
Right.
Which he then says prompts a logical next question, which he doesn't voice.
Right.
Right.
But the obvious question is, what is your freaky that you've been hiding? And she shows him, and she begins singing, I am the very model of a modern major general. I'm information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I am very well acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations both the simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I'm teeming with a lot of news, with many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings and animalculous. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern major general. And to prove my Gilbert and Sullivan street cred, I'll go farther than she did. I know our mythic history, King Arthur's answer paradox. I answer hard acrostics, I have a pretty taste for paradox. I quote in elegiacs all the crimes of Heliogabalus. In conics, I can floor peculiarities parabolas. I can tell undoubted Raphaels from Gerald Dowson's Ophanes. I know the croaking chorus from the frogs of Aristophanes. Then I can hum a fugue of which I've heard the music's denophore, and whistle all the years from that infernal nonsense pinafore. Then I can write a washing bill in Babylonic uniform and give you every detail of Caractacus's uniform. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern major general.
Very good. Bravo. Bravo.
Folks, this is all the content that you can only get if you're a patron.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that particular choice from the Pirates of Penzance should sound familiar to Star Trek fans because
Picard.
Dr. Crusher was trying to get LaForge to sing it.
That's right. That's right. It's LaForge.
Before the disaster hit the Enterprise. It was the episode Disaster, TNG episode Disaster.
That's right.
Incidentally, I had, back when Enterprise was on the air, Star Trek Enterprise, I always wanted them to begin, and after they established that the Enterprise crew was putting on dramatics and so forth, I wanted them to have an episode that began with T'Pol in a major general's uniform doing that song. And that actually would be like a fusion of Spock and Number One.
It would. That would. That's right.
And so I thought that was unusually suitable. And Spock and Number One bond over this. Needless to say, as a Gilbert and Sullivan fan, I was delighted by this. And they bond over it. Spock even
joins in
clumsily at first, but then with improving skill joins in, and they both laugh at the end. And it's a great bonding moment for the two of them with their freakiness that they're hiding.
Well, I love that, though, because there was about a 30-second pause, and it was a lengthy pause. I mean, for television, where it got really awkward. And you could see it in Number One's face like, oh, did I just overstep my bounds big time here? And then all of a sudden he starts smiling and singing along, and he's got this big old grin by the time they're done, and they're just laughing.
Right.
Yeah.
But then she gets uncomfortable, right? What something prompts her to want to get out all of a sudden.
Yeah. What happens is, so they've been trying to repair the thing. They've been on the intercom to engineering, and they've been poking around in the controls and the equipment at the top of the capsule of the elevator. And it shorted out, and there was this shower of really cool looking blue sparks that are blue for some reason. And then engineering said they were sending down an engineer down the shaft with rappelling equipment.
Right.
Someone who's an expert rappeller. And she ends up on the top of the capsule just as they're having their bonding moment. And Number One does not want anybody else to know what she's just shared with Spock.
Right.
And so she orders him to forget what just happened and says she wants a hole in her memory and demands that he swear that he will never bring this up again, which he then does.
Right.
Swear.
He does swear. So they eventually make their way to the bridge where Pike asks Spock if Vulcans ever feel awe. Which he says
they're looking at a cool nebula.
Yes, and he says they do, but they tend to keep it to themselves, and then gives a knowing look to Number One. And then that's where the episode ends. Although we do have a dedication at the end to the memory of Dr. Robert Chabon. This episode, like I said, was written by Michael Chabon, who's running the new Picard series, and who also wrote the short trek Calypso, by the way. And Dr. Robert Chabon is Michael's father, who died last March. So nice dedication.
Very good.
So anything left to say about this short trek?
Father?
one small thing. When Spock reported in, he gave his serial number as S179276SP, and that's right out of the original series episode Court Martial.
Very nice.
I liked I really enjoyed this episode because it showed us how these two very similar characters could relate and the type of dynamic they could have together on a future Pike Enterprise show. Because that would be a question, given how Spock's character changed to become more number one like. How would this relationship work if we ever got a Pike series? And I think they established one very nicely. I think Spock admires number one by the end of this episode. He admires her efficiency and intelligence and the fact she's got a hidden side too. I even think they created a situation where there could be some girlfriend-boyfriend potential between the two of them. And, you know, with the J.J. Abrams movies, we've seen Spock as someone who's capable of forming romantic relationships with humans. I think number one would be a good candidate for that. At a minimum, the two of them, we have here the basis of a unique and very strong friendship.
Interesting. Right? Yeah, I like the fact that it shows Spock normal. Like throughout most of the second season of Discovery, Spock is having mental health issues and other problems. This is Spock at normal, just base level Spock, and I do like seeing that.
One thing I did forget to mention, kind of on more the whole level, I like these ideas of the short treks. I like these ideas of these short standalone episodes. You know, they're just short stories. They're real simple. And I want to say that of the 5 we've seen so far, counting the first set of 4, this is probably my favorite that we've had so far.
The 6th now. We had The Escape Artist, which came out in January after the other 4 separately. That was the one with Mudd, Harry Mudd.
I thought there were 4.
That was the original 4.
That was the last of the 4th of the 4.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted your point.
No, that's fine. That was there's the 4 before season 2 Discovery, and then now this is the first of the set of 6. And this is the one I like the best so far. Although the Mudd one was fantastic, and of course Calypso was great as well. But this is my favorite so far because we still have 5 more to see, so we don't know what's coming yet.
Yeah, I think this one it's the best interpersonal dialogue, the best connection between two characters here. I really enjoyed this more than any of the others. This repartee between these two is well written. I mean, obviously Michael Chabon is a really great writer, so it really shows in this one. So I really do appreciate that.
I had basically the same 3 favorites as you guys. I liked Calypso. I really liked the Harry Mudd one. In terms of pure enjoyment, it would be a toss-up for me between the Harry Mudd one and this one. But I really like this one. I love getting to see Spock and number one, interrelating. Yeah,
I mean, it brings us one of our most favorite characters of all of Star Trek, Spock. And I mean, what's not to like about that?
And it helps contextualize his character arc in the original series, because in the pilot we see him being more emotional and then he becomes less emotional as we go along, and we got to see him being more kind of in a midpoint in season 2 of Discovery. So his evolution from someone who's more emotional to less emotional to then finding a balance by the time of the movies this helps contextualize that as well.
Yep. Excellent. So we should probably wrap it up there before this becomes a regular episode of Secrets of Star Trek. So we also, unfortunately, we don't have Father Cory with us today.
Yeah.
But he did record some thoughts, and we'll play those for you at the end of our discussion so that he'll be able to join in with what he thought about this episode.
So just like this episode of Short Treks had a post-credit scene, we're going to have a Father Cory post-credit scene?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I do have some thoughts on the existence of a post-credit scene. Hopefully everyone stuck around and to watch it. I saw that it was a suspiciously long amount of time as the credits rolled, so I did stick around for that. So what we have is basically it's another short track which takes place not in or around Discovery, but in or around Pike's Enterprise, which is interesting.
I think that Short Treks is now being conceptualized not as add-ons for Discovery, but as its own thing.
Yes.
That it can go, anywhere in the Star Trek universe, and they're tying it in to other series. So we know a couple of the short treks are going to be tied into the animated series that are coming out, and we've had 2 that are connected with Pike, and I think the other 2 may be as well, rather than Discovery. I don't know, but I think they're using the Pike-related short treks as a surrogate placeholder until they can get a Pike series going, because they know that's what the fans really want.
And given how the last season of Discovery ended, where Discovery is presumably in the future, we've got this cliffhanger, which we can't really reveal anything about. So if you had Discovery-related short treks, you'd have to do it in the past, which I know they did with one of them, with telling the backstory of Saru, but you've kind of got to balance that. We'll see how that, if they do anything like that with the other short treks. But at least these are Pike-related. Although this one only tangentially Pike-related. We only get Pike right at the very beginning here.
So this one, The Trouble with Edward, is a prequel to the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yes, it is an origin story of Tribbles.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a comedy.
Yes.
Which our last one kind of was too. Not full-on comedy. This is full-on comedy.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, some fans may not like that, given how comedic it is. But actually, Star Trek has done a lot of comedy.
Yep.
I mean, the original Trouble with Tribbles episode was a comedy.
It was played for laughs, yeah.
Yeah, and there have been lots of comedy episodes in the history of Star Trek, in multiple different series.
Right.
We have things like, in the original series, A Piece of the Action, the one with the gangsters, that was comedy. I, Mud,
definitely,
with the androids.
Every time Mud showed up. Yes.
Yeah, but especially I, Mud.
Yes.
In the Next Generation, we had a variety of comedy episodes, including ones with Lwaxana Troi and Q.
Yep.
We had A Fistful of Datas.
Right.
On the holodeck. In Deep Space Nine, we had House of Quark, where the one with Grilka, where Quark has to become a sort of kind of Klingon. Prophet and Lace, where Quark becomes a woman.
Yep.
Lots and Trials and Tribulations.
Trials and Tribulations, I was going to say, is another one. But you know what this episode reminded me a lot of in its feel is the Orville. It felt a lot like an Orville episode where you just have these comedic elements really coming in. And the Orville, if you've been watching that, over time has becoming more serious. It started as a parody series and becoming more serious. And this is Star Trek becoming a little less serious, which is kind of an interesting meeting in the middle. But I thought I do like that what we have here is essentially the story of an incompetent member of Starfleet. Like not everyone in Starfleet is the best at everything, because know that can't be true.
This guy is Reginald Barclay, only less so.
In a more sinister way, in a sense, that results it. So, well, let's talk about this. They're orbiting this planet on the edge of on Klingon space. The civilization is on the brink of starvation, and so Captain Lynn Lucero is the new captain. She was the science officer on Enterprise and was just promoted to be the captain of this other ship, the Cabot. And they're over this planet Pragene 63, which apparently there's 62 other
planets in this solar system.
Yes,
which actually is realistic if you think about it. I mean, if you use what should be the definition, everybody's definition of a planet, an object large enough to be round but not large enough to glow, then we have something like 50 planets in our solar system.
Right.
So that's just fine.
Yeah. So Captain Lynn Lucero's job is to help the people of Pragene 63 without the Klingons finding out. That's sort of like she's got this little science vessel that she's got to manage. So as she's leaving the Enterprise, Pike gives her the joking advice that don't show any weakness or they'll eat you alive. It turns out to be good advice, actually, related to this, because
except he means it as a joke.
Yes, he does not mean literally, but where in literally it happens. He then cautions her that she got the job because she's a brilliant scientist, but she's going to find that not everyone's on her level, which is exactly what happens here.
Yes.
To disaster effect. So her first briefing on board her ship we are introduced to Edward Larkin, an insecure, incompetent but brilliant drone scientist. Like, he's sort of a bureaucratic drone, not very good at what he does, who sabotages others because of his own insecurities, yet shows flashes of brilliance and won't admit defeat. He never admits that he's wrong.
And he's socially very awkward.
Yes.
He's very awkward. I like this briefing scene where it's like a Monday morning thing in an office where they're all talking about what their departments are doing. And I like that everybody except the captain is a blue shirt.
Right.
They're all, because it's a science research vessel.
Right.
And I like also we have Trill.
Yep.
Who's there? And this is the first black Trill that I can recall seeing.
Right. And the earliest Trill, given its Pike's Enterprise. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so I like the crew. There's Edward Larkin, when she asks what's your department doing, he says, "Oh, I don't have a department. It's just me."
Right. Like that's what she means. Just go with it. Dude.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And he can't manage the pad that he's trying to work, and he's like, it's broken. And the woman next to him was like, no, just, oh, well, she fixed it. Thank you for fixing that. It was broken.
He's trying to cover for not knowing how to use his device.
So he's a protein specialist, a biologist, and his solution for the problem here is he introduced him to this life form from Iota Geminorum 4. So this is the homeworld of the Tribble.
Tribbles.
Their Latin name is Triblusis ventricosus. Does that mean anything? Does it mean ventricosus?
It's based on the Latin word for womb.
So tribbles that are born pregnant, which we'll get to in a second. So they're all like, as soon as they see the Tribble, everyone around the table goes, "Aw, how cute!" And then he says, "But yeah, you take all that fur off, and it's just pure meat, like a little it's a red scallop."
Blood red,
which is just so gross. But they're all horrified by this, and I'm like, why? Because it's cute, dude. Because by then people don't eat real meat. Maybe people in the future don't eat real meat.
By then, people won't normally eat real meat. They'll be eating lab-grown stuff, but in all likelihood.
Yes.
But they're horrified, I think, just because it's cute and because it serves the plot, and so they get to say, "Are you suggesting we eat them?" It's like, well, I don't want to eat them, but I was thinking they could be a food source for the Calations, except they breed really slowly.
Yes. But and everyone watching it, hearing that, like, goes, breed really slowly. That's a key point.
But I could fix that. I could change their DNA and make them breed a lot faster. And and I have eaten a couple, for research purposes. And I gave one to this guy here, and he liked it. He's a foodie. And the guy who's supposed to be a foodie looks at the captain and does this little quick head shake.
Like, I didn't like it. Looking her in the eyes. I didn't like it. But his idea actually it seems sound in principle. Find this food source, and it's kind of slow moving, and you can. It's
and
pure
so
meat.
The captain says, "Are they intelligent?" And he's like, "It's kind of hard to say. They don't have a face, but they're really slow moving, and so they'd be easy to hunt." And
he totally misses the point of what she's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if they were intelligent, I feel like it would be very easy to capture and then eat them. She's asking the moral question here. Right. Oh, well, I could alter their DNA to make them all brain damaged. That would solve that.
So, I mean, this whole scene is like a slow motion train wreck. You see everything coming from a mile away. You know how this is going to end. But it's the anticipation of how it all gets there, watching it happen in real time, so to speak, that is the fun of this. And so, we establish that Edward seems to be lacking in some morality, ethics, and maybe a little practical common sense here. Because then he's essentially that guy from Office Space, Milton, with the red stapler. Like, it's the disgruntled worker, who eventually destroys everything. But so we have with the next scene is he's called into the not the very next scene.
Before that, he's like starting a whisper campaign against the captain.
Right, that's
in
what I was
the
going to
mess
say.
hall,
Right,
and he's doing it so ineffectively. So he's like, talking to this guy who's getting his lunch. So, new commander, barf.
Nobody likes her.
Actually, I think people like her. No, they don't.
Well, plus the guy has walked away by now, and he's kind of just still saying it. And then he finally says, "No, they don't." Like to no one now. Like he's so slow on the uptake. So right then we have him in the lab. No, this is before he's in the lab.
It looks like engineering or something, and she's praising this other officer and says, "Oh, I'm looking forward to having more fascinating work from you in the future." And there's this big robotic thing doing stuff in the background,
right?
And he sees the captain praising this other officer, and so he gets his tribble. He's got a tribble in a glass box, and he sprays it
with something.
So we know that he's going ahead with his plan.
So then he gets called to the captain's office, and she tells him, Starfleet Command has received anonymous complaints about her and her work.
Several last night.
Yes, last night, and that she's dumb.
And she's bad at her job, should be replaced immediately, and she's dumb.
Yes, and she's like, well, what do you have to say about that? He's like, well, are you dumb? Are you bad at your job? Like he's totally terrible, and like she knows he did it. And he's trying to pretend that she doesn't know he did it. And
those were anonymous messages, and that means you don't know who sent them.
Right. So she tells him, like, look, it's not working out. We're transferring you to another ship. And then he won't stop talking. Like
I know she keeps saying the conversation is over and variations on that phrase. But no, I can just keep talking and then the conversation won't be over.
It reminds me of Voyager, where Janeway was we just talked about a few weeks ago. That's Starfleet for get out, dismissed. So, and then we have this great scene where the Tribbles have started.
But before then, though, it's like are you saying I'm dumb?
Yes.
It's like, no, you contacted Starfleet and said I'm dumb, but he becomes fixated on the idea that she has said he's dumb when she hasn't said that.
Right. Yes, the imagined slights that comes up that justify his actions. So the Tribbles start reproducing, as we know, they start popping off of each other. And then we have this
explosively.
We have this scene where he steps out of his quarters, presumably in the middle of the night, in his pajama top, and seeing people rushing past him.
Everyone's running around him. He's like, "What's going on?"
There's a lab breach, and then they pull back the camera, and he's standing there in his tidy whities. You guys need some help?
Just his underpants, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's like the guy is so incompetent. And we have this great moment of over the action on the scene of the Tribbles reproducing and being found in places. We have Bing Crosby singing Johnny Appleseed as they collect Tribbles. Like, because I mean, the idea that he's Johnny Appleseed who's planted Tribbles everywhere, I guess.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny.
Interesting analogy. Nice callback to mid-20th century pop culture.
Yes, very nice.
Also, there's a scene where they're in the lab and the captain is there and they're learning the Tribbles are breeding explosively now, and Edward is, who did this?
Yes. And as they're talking, this guy walks in the background. He just got a big vacuum on his back where it's this huge tube sucking up Tribbles.
It's this Dr. Seuss looking vacuum. Yeah.
It was awesome. The Tribble vacuum. I want one of those. And then we find
in the Johnny Appleseed montage, we get a bunch of short little takes on things where we get the captain in her ready room sitting on a Tribble, which is a classic. Every time you have a Tribble episode, the captain has to sit on a Tribble. You get other people collecting Tribbles and putting them in big translucent boxes or transparent boxes of plastic. But we then see Edward collecting Tribbles. He's putting them in a stew pot.
Yes. That's right, to be cooked. One of the other scientists, the Trill scientist, she reveals that they've discovered that they're born pregnant. The Tribbles are born, which is a callback to the original Trouble with Tribbles episode.
Yep, and it's a real thing in terrestrial biology. There are some species that are born that way. Particularly, some mites are born that way, and they're also. There's another group of species that are born that way, like including
the fly species?
So that's actually a real thing.
Interesting. Well, as Edward says, that's what happens when you mix Tribble DNA and human DNA, and then reveals that it was his DNA, and everyone goes, ew. He's like, oh, it would be better if it was his.
Yeah, I'm not sure what, I mean, it's the trope. Of course, it's going to be his DNA.
Of course.
But I kind of agree with him. It's like, well, why, if it's going to be anybody's, why not mine? Why is like someone else is going to be better?
Yes. And the Captain Lucero, says you disobeyed a direct order. He's like, but it worked. Like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it worked.
This is not going to go well for you.
Yes. So what we then see, the Tribbles are reproducing so rapidly, exponentially, that we see from the outside the windows filling up. Of course, we have a problem here, a logical problem. Where is all the biomass?
Food?
Yeah. In the Trouble with Tribbles, they were eating all the grain. But
right.
Maybe there's lots of grain on board that they're using to deal with.
To address the starvation issue. Yeah. It could be they should have included a line about that or something. We also get other riffs on previous Tribble episodes. Like if you have a Tribble episode, Tribbles must fall on someone.
Yes.
You have to have a Tribble fall. And here, though, they play it instead of for comedy, like in all the other cases, they play it for horror. And we have this woman screaming as Tribbles fall on her.
Yeah, presumably she doesn't die because we find out later that only one person dies on board.
Right.
So they're all
the ship is now running out of oxygen.
Yes.
And
they're evacuating.
There's moving walls of Tribbles, and they're evacuating, and they're like getting into apparently they have a really small crew.
Yeah.
And they're evacuating into this shuttle to get off the ship, and the captain is like urging Edward to come. And he's standing there, and he's still stuck on this idea of you said I'm dumb, and I'm not dumb.
He's monologuing.
He's monologuing, and he's clearly dumb because he's then overwhelmed by a wall of Tribbles.
Yes, and then we'll find out later that the ship structure failed at the number of Tribbles.
He was lost, so those Tribbles ate him.
Yeah, ate him, or he died in the explosive decompression, but one or the other. Let's hope that was the latter. And then we then go to Lynn being court-martialed back at Starfleet headquarters, Lynn Lucero, and this list of her faults are read off to her. In 2 weeks, you lost your ship, one crew member is dead, and a genetically modified species was released onto the planet and presumably destroyed everything.
Forced an evacuation of an entire civilization.
Yes.
And it's gotten into Klingon space, causing a diplomatic crisis. How do you explain that?
Yeah, how could you blame this on one crew member? And she just says, he was an idiot.
Yeah. So she finally does say he's dumb.
Yes, exactly. So poor Captain Lucero. I mean, she made some mistakes, but gosh, yeah.
This was not her fault.
What they should have done was explosively decompress the ship and ejected all the Tribbles into space while they were in someplace safe.
That's exactly what they did in the Mode in God's Eye.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah,
and it didn't work.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah.
Well, given that the Tribbles apparently survived the destruction of the Cabot and landed on the planet's surface, some of them must survive the going down through the atmosphere and the vacuum of space. These are pretty hardy creatures.
And that happened. I mean, like when the Challenger blew up over my grandmother's ranch in Texas, I mean, they found biological samples that were still in their containers and stuff that were fine.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a story for another time. We're doing a short trek.
She thought the world was ending.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to ask about that, but we can't do that now. Maybe that'll be in a future patron special we'll do. So then we get to credits.
I have in my notes for this part of the show that the acting by Edward and Lucero is really good.
Yes.
They're both really playing their parts well.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I'm almost sad that Larkin is dead because he would make a funny character to have around for some other stuff that they do. But so then we get roll credits, and if you turned off your CBS All Access or whatever at this moment, you missed it because, and like we said at the beginning, I noticed that there was a suspiciously long amount of time provided in the stream for the credits, so I stuck around.
I noticed that we hadn't seen things that were in the trailer for these, and so I knew there was an extra scene coming.
And that might have been on purpose that those were in the trailer. So that's interesting. So we get this post-credit scene where we see the a tracking message from like a 80s style VCR, just totally anachronistic here. And then a scene that's like a breakfast cereal commercial for
USS
Tribbles.
Ravenous Stardate Breakfast.
With Tribbles cereal. Tribbles is the brand name. And we have
the only cereal with self-replication.
Yes, we have a female officer, these two girls in kid uniforms in a mess hall where the presumably mom is pouring the Tribbles out of the box on a continuous stream because they're replicating.
There's a prize at the bottom of the box. Not that you'll ever get to the bottom of the box.
Let's see. There's a picture of Edward that comes up on screen, and where it says there's a substantial amount of Edward in the cereal. Edward has not been approved as a human macronutrient.
Yeah, they flash little messages on the screen like they do in real TV commercials. One of them says, Edward trademark macronutrient not approved by Federation Food and Drug Administration.
Yeah, firm may present choking hazard.
It is suggested that you shave cereal with Edward brand Tribble Razor included in the Tribble Cereal Super Salon playset sold separately. Edward Cereals LLC not responsible if Tribbles thrive and replicate in digestive tract. Chew thoroughly.
It comes in original Harry Berry and new Spicy Ranch. And then at the end, we're pregnant with flavor. And of course you have the little girl doing the furry, which is so gross. Oh man,
it tickles.
It tickles. All right, so well, let's take a moment now as we finish up to hear what Father Cory had to say about this episode. So it's a few minutes long, and we'll hear that now.
Howdy, all. I really enjoyed this episode, and I think this episode and the other episodes of Short Treks we've had so far this season, the other one, Q&A, are a good sign for Short Treks this year. Last year, I think we were pretty unanimous in liking two of the episodes and not liking two of the others. The Calypso and Escape Artist episodes we all really enjoyed. We thought they were great, well-done episodes. The Runaway and Brightest Star, we weren't so happy about. We didn't agree with those quite as much. This year, though, is not quite the same issue. So far, Q&A, and in my opinion, this episode, The Trouble with Edward, well done, very funny, very clever episodes. I like some of the parallels in this one, especially between this little short trek and the Trouble with Tribbles episode. You know, you see that scene where the captain sits down in her chair in her ready room, and there's a Tribble there. You know, that, of course, immediately calls back to Kirk sitting down in the command chair of the Enterprise, and there's a Tribble there. There's that scene where the Tribbles are just pouring out of that panel on the ship, and again, that's paralleling that opening up that container that was supposed to be full of grain, and it was said of being full of Tribbles that fell down on Kirk's head. You know, things like that. You know, the idea that the Tribbles could actually reproduce to the point of destroying a ship and overrunning an ecology. And I think that answers one of the questions about Tribbles is how could this animal survive to the point, you know, to go on and be throughout the universe? You would think that if they reproduce this prolifically, if there's so many of them, they're constantly reproducing, that eventually the planet would not be able to sustain them. And of course, the episode explains that originally they didn't reproduce this strongly. They reproduced very low, had a very low reproductive rate. And that's how Lorca could have a Tribble on the Discovery, because they weren't seen as a threat. They didn't reproduce that often. They weren't a big deal. They just kind of sat there and cooed and looked cute. And so it wasn't a big deal. Well, now with the addition of Edward Larkin's DNA causing them to be born pregnant, as it says both in Trouble Tribbles and in this episode, yet another parallel. Now we see why they're such a threat. It's interesting. I was expecting when the captain was talking to Larkin, Captain Lucero was talking to Larkin, that I expected to hear Janeway's line about dismissed, that Starfleet for get out. I was always hoping for that. But Larkin was so awkward and just not a lot of common sense. He was smart, but he didn't have a lot of common sense. He didn't really think through his actions. And of course, that led to seeing the ship destroyed. And then we hear about how the Tribbles took over the planet and ended up in Klingon space. And of course, we know with Trouble with Tribbles that eventually Klingons grow to hate Tribbles, and the feeling is mutual. So again, this was a very well done episode. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I thought it was very interesting. It was nice to see the Enterprise. You know, of course, they showed the Enterprise model, or, you know, whatever you want to put it. They showed the Enterprise. That was nice to see. I love the Easter egg at the end very much a 1980s cereal commercial. You know, those of us who grew up during the 80s, we remember those commercials. We love those commercials. We all wanted the super sugary cereal, although the Spicy Ranch Tribbles sounds rather interesting. So anyways, it was a great, very well done. And if this is how the short treks are going to go going forward, it's going to be awesome.
So thanks, Father Cory, for that. We do appreciate you recording that for us, and we're sorry you're not here to participate in the discussion, but you know we knew you couldn't miss having something to say about this great short trek. So Jimmy, any last thoughts about this episode of Short Treks, or any of the ones that we're about to see?
Well, no, this was really good. I really enjoyed this. The fact we've talked about it for almost twice as long as the actual episode really conveys the density of the ideas and how much there is to say about something like this. We were clearly enthusiastic about this.
Yes. And this apparently bodes well for this season of Short Trek. And also says we need more Pike Enterprise and more Star Trek from them beyond Discovery, and so I'm glad we're getting that. This is where we're going to now talk about this month's, November's short trek, which is called Ask Not. So before we get into it,
maybe I shouldn't ask, but why is it called that?
That's right. So let's talk about the title first, because you presumably. We'll presume that you've seen the episode first, so we don't have to recap the whole thing for you.
Spoilers ahoy!
Yes, the whole thing is a spoiler. It's a very short episode. I think it was like under 10 minutes, or
less than 10 minutes.
Short. Yeah. So the title is Ask Not, and Father Cory, you said that that you'd seen a reference that this was a reference to what?
So the on the Memory Alpha, at least they say my initial thought was that it's a reference to the famous John F. Kennedy quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." You know, and of course that's a phrase that people have heard 100 times. That's probably, you know, was it his inaugural address?
Yes, his first inaugural address. Yes,
only inaugural address.
Yes, so, only inaugural.
Yeah, so that's what I thought. And that was my immediate picture, and it does kind of fit the theme of the short trek. I think, Jimmy, though, you have a different read on it.
Yeah, my first thought was that it's based on "Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee," which is a reference to death. Mm-hmm. And either way you go, I don't see a clear connection with what happens in this short track. I think it's too obscure as a title.
Yeah, I even as I thought it was the JFK reference, and even as a JFK reference, I thought, how does this fit with it? I didn't really like. I mean, I get what you're saying, Father Cory, like with the explanation that someone on the Memory Alpha gave, but I still don't. I'm not sure. Yeah,
I guess the idea of service and sacrifice to your nation, or in this case, the Federation and the good, good of Starfleet and so on.
Yeah,
that is not about
maybe,
you.
But you know what they say: the butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's cry.
That's right. They did say that. Actually, they did say that. So here's the recap. When an attack on Starbase 28 leaves a surprise prisoner under Cadet Theris Sidhu's watch, she has to make a decision that may threaten her official standing in Starfleet, her career in Starfleet. So did anyone else figure it out right from the very beginning that this was a simulation?
Oh, of course. Yeah. As soon as so by the way, we've seen Starbase 28 before. It was in Discovery.
Yep.
And they bring in the prisoner with the big face mask on, so we can't initially see him.
Creepy.
Although we knew, because everyone knew this is going to be Pike.
Right.
And as soon as they say Cadet Sidhu, I have in my notes, this is a test. This is only a test.
Yep. Right.
Because there's no way they're under ordinary circumstances, they're entrusting a prisoner like Captain Pike for mutiny to a cadet.
Right.
This is clearly some kind of test.
Well, and, it was funny because there were YouTube commentators who, even from just the trailer, like there's, one of the trailers for the short trek showed Pike with the bracelets, with the handcuffs on, with this cadet. And it's like, this is going to be a test. This is not, he's really not going to be under arrest.
And that I had said to myself just from the trailer for this thing that there is, there's something suspicious here. They're not being straight with us because Pike is a good guy, so he has to be vindicated by the end of this thing. So that means, what are the implications for the person? We didn't know it was a cadet at the time, or I didn't know. You know, the young person who's holding him and refusing to let him go. That person is either fundamentally bad at the end of the episode, in which case we have a downer ending. The natural inclination is going to be to have this person be good. So there's a misunderstanding of some kind that's built into this, that's just baked into the structure of this episode. It's just a question of what's the nature of the misunderstanding. And as soon as I realized this person is a cadet who is therefore a person who is being trained, I said, this is a Kobayashi Maru thing. Yeah. This is some kind of test.
Right.
As soon as cruel one at that.
Okay. Yeah. As soon as they said cadet, I knew it was going to be, a simulation. But you're right, Father Corey. I think it's both dangerous and implausible as a test, because the very first explosion that happens is heavy enough to throw her across the room. That is,
and knock her out.
Yeah. That is like you're giving this her a concussion as a part of vetting. I guess it's hazing her as a cadet for a job. Basically an elaborate charade to vet a cadet for a short training period for the rest of the semester aboard the Enterprise.
An internship.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically the equivalent of an internship. So, I mean,
yeah, this so we're going to the core problem of this.
Right.
We're kind of leaping over the episode itself.
Right.
But
it's only a scene, so yes.
Well, yeah, but still, you know, we're not really walking through the dynamics of the episode. But let's get it out of the way, because we've already touched this third rail. She's an engineering cadet. She's going to be posted to like making coffee in engineering.
Yes.
For the rest of the semester. My thought was, does everybody who works on the Enterprise get tested this way? I mean, that's ridiculous. You're not going to do that to 400 people. And if you did, word would get out. You know, people would talk about this. So this kind of rigorous, intensive vetting, if you're going to do it at all, should be reserved only for key positions, not cadets.
See, I could see
ordinary engineers. It should be command staff and senior officers only.
See, that's I you know, kind of going off that, Jimmy. I could see like a senior head of security. Like if he's picking out a personal head of security that he wants, that he would run him or her through this kind of drill.
Right. This just is, or if it were something like part of like a Kobayashi Maru, like something at the academy, a test that they put them through at the academy. But this is just ridiculous. I mean, I'm sorry, but it bends plausibility to the breaking point on this one. I like some of the dynamics in the interactions, but the premise is just flawed fatally. So
flawed. I thought it was still fun.
Yeah, well,
it was a fun episode. It's just it starts from kind of a weak point.
Yes. So we have this. You know, the base is under attack. We're told this cadet is in inventory 2 on the service. It's not even inventory 1. She's in inventory 2. Keeping track of inventory. So it's like a really lowly place on board. But then the security officer shows up with a bondage mask on a prisoner's head, which is very odd. And he says, why the mask? And he says, well, the crew doesn't need to see that this guy turned. I'm thinking, okay, given what we learned,
given his gold shirt and the stripes on the wrist, you know it's a captain.
Exactly. And which ship is in around us? Well, it could be the Enterprise. So Pike supposedly, we're told, is he mutinied when he refused to leave this ship, a starship, the USS Bowman, behind when it was attacked by Tholians. But he was ordered to leave on direct orders of some unknown admiral that he rescued from the ship. And then we're told that Sidhu's husband just happens to be on board the Bowman.
Right.
And they both happen to be victims of a Tholian attack on their colony. And
she happens to have been rejected to be on the Enterprise. And he ended up on the Bowman, and she wanted to be on the Enterprise and was rejected for it.
Yes.
And the Tholians want the Enterprise. And so he says, let's blow the Tholians to hell. It's what they deserve. And it's like, come on, you're not even trying to pretend this isn't a ruse. Captain Pike would never say that.
Right. And so when Pike supposedly refused to leave the Bowman behind, the Admiral said, the Enterprise needs to leave because they're trying to get the Enterprise. He refused to leave them. And so he was relieved of command for resisting.
Then we have Battle of the Legal Arguments where they're flinging regulations at each other, which is actually kind of fun it goes by quite fast.
Right.
But it is a legal point counterpoint thing they're doing, and it you can follow it. It makes some sense.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, what I wrote down was stop arguing with the prisoner.
right. That should be a note against her.
Tell him to sit down and shut up. And keep saying that.
Stun him. The phaser has a stun function. Stun him quiet. Yeah, there was a couple of Pike's rejoinders were pretty lame. A superior officer can countermand that order. You're under arrest, so your orders have no bearing.
Yeah, exactly. You can order all you want. It ain't gonna do no good.
And then we have another kayfabe breaking moment where when Pike says, when this is all done, you will never see the inside of a starship again. And it's like, okay, you're not even pretending this isn't a ruse. Captain Pike would never be petty and vengeful in that way.
Exactly. Nope. Yep. So the Cadet Sadu does get a good line here. She says in response, tactical force should always be used as a last resort, and vengeance should never be a factor. Like she kind of throws it back at him because he's trying to appeal to her desire to get revenge on the Tholians for what they did to her colony and what they may have already done to her husband on his ship. And so, her character moment comes out where her moral integrity is intact. Vengeance is not what we're about here in Starfleet. So, but again, how cruel is it to make her think her husband's life was in danger?
Yeah.
That. I mean, I would, if I were her, I would be resentful at the end of this. I would file charges.
They do say your husband is now on his way to you. So she's going to get to see him soon, even though we don't. And they hang a lantern on the cruelty thing after it's all over. And Pike reveals it was a test. It's like a challenge like this might seem extreme, even inhumane, but it's necessary for a making coffee and engineering position.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently number one had the idea for this. Like she's the one who came up with this really awful test to put it on cadets.
Obviously Spock approved.
Yes. Yeah. Cause Spock was there too.
I don't know that he says Spock gets a nice line. He says, we've all learned not to expect no mercy from number one. And she kind of looks at him like, I think Spock is not entirely approving.
Right. And then again, we have the coffee making intern in engineering, but Pike, the captain of the ship, is the one who escorts her down to her new duty posting and just kind of leaves her there. Doesn't introduce her to anybody, but So couple things. I really liked the look of the Enterprise's engine room. It's very cool. And actually
very, very different from what we see in the original series. So if you're a stickler about that, sorry.
Yeah, that ship has sailed, actually literally in the sense of Enterprise. But it also sort of justifies all that open space we're seeing in the secondary hull. It's a very big open space. And a question, why doesn't Pike answer her when she asks if the phaser that she was given was operational? I get it, if it were a contemporary thing, was the gun loaded? That's the question. But it's a phaser. It stuns. What's the worst that could happen is she'd stun him and he'd be knocked out, right?
There's part of me that wants to say, well, by not answering, he's answering in the affirmative.
But what's the big dramatic point?
He's being playful.
Okay.
He's just being mysterious for the fun of it.
Right. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I mean, it just seemed like we're trying to find some clever way to wrap up the little 10-minute episode.
Yep. That's it. And we need something that we could use in the original series that would trigger the clarinet of humor. But this is basically that. Right.
That's true. All right. So that's the whole thing. There's not much more to say about it, I think, unless you guys have anything left that we haven't.
One thing, again, going to what I've seen other commentators say online, it's interesting how much time and effort they put into that CGI engineering room
Right.
Because there are these rumors and interest, and we know there's interest on the part of fans, but even on the part of CBS, I'm sure, because fans want it, to have a Pike Enterprise TV show, or now that there's the merger between CBS and Viacom, possibly even a movie.
That would be
I would
interesting.
much rather have a TV show than a movie.
Same
TV
here.
shows
Same
last
here.
longer. And Star Trek always does better. Star Trek's first best destiny is to be television.
There's a conversation I want to have somewhere. I'm not sure where that will be, where I want to posit that we're better off with given the streaming series, we have the ability to have streaming series now.
Mm-hmm.
We're better off with streaming series than movies for most of our most popular storytelling. It used to be movie was the big thing you always wanted to get, but maybe the better thing is to be a streaming series. But that's it.
And I will grant that, but it's just the fact that they went through such effort to create engineering instead of just showing her, him leading her into the door to engineering, which you could know because it's the big blast doors,
right?
And then leaving it at that, they actually went through and made this detailed CGI set. Yeah. There's something going on there. I kind of agree with those commentators that are thinking that there's something going on there.
The whole point of the first 3 short treks is just to keep fan interest alive for a Pike series.
Right. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Okay, The Girl Who Made the Stars. It is I would say it's a animation done in the more CGI Pixar style.
Type. Yeah. It's kind of the Pixar type animation.
Really, these days, even the 2D animation is done on computers.
It is.
Right. They're trying to make it look like Pixar 3D animation here.
Right. And so the short form is we have a young Michael Burnham who is living with her parents, her biological parents, as we met them in the second season of Discovery. And there's a lightning storm in space around their station, and she's having trouble sleeping, and her dad tells her a story of an African tale from African history that to kind of make her less scared, I guess it is.
It really sounded like a kind of a typical nativist religion, how the world came into existence. It kind of sounds along that lines.
Yeah.
And we've heard this story before, because if you look at the second season of Discovery episode Brother, it starts with an opening narration in which Michael Burnham says, 1,000 centuries ago in Africa, the Abathwa tribe gathered to share a story, the tale of a girl who dug her hands into the wood ash and threw it into the sky and created the Milky Way. And hidden there, a secret buried among the eternal stars, was a message, an enormous letter in a bottle made of space and time, visible only to those whose hearts were open enough to receive it. All my life, when I first heard the story of the girl who made the stars, I wasn't ready to understand. I still don't know if I am. So bear that in mind as we watch this episode, because this is apparently the first time she's heard the story of the girl who made the stars when her dad tells it to her.
Okay. So this is not voiced by either of the character. I don't think this is the same actor who plays her dad. It is?
Mike is the same character, and it's Kenrick Green. And if the last name sounds familiar, because Sonequa Martin Green, it's her husband.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
But obviously, Sonequa Martin Green wouldn't easily be able to do an 8-year-old girl voice, so they have a different actress for that.
Right. Kyrie McAlpin is her name. And so we have, she has a stuffed tardigrade and a stuffed animal.
Mistake. It immediately popped me out of the episode, and I'm thinking about, why does she have a tardigrade here?
Right.
I did like, though, they have a CGI fake out with the station, because we initially see this, what looks like a station, and then it turns out to be like an art object in her bedroom.
Yeah.
I also really liked seeing her dad. It was just so nice to see her dad alive and functional in a healthy relationship with his daughter, being a loving father. That was just so nice. I loved that.
Right. It's very Pixar, isn't it? It's like the idea of like the family thing, and that is nice. She tells her dad, she wakes from a nightmare. She tells her dad that she's more afraid of the idea of being scared than she is actually scared, which I thought was interesting. And an interesting.
That's a little pretzel logic there.
Yes, it's an interesting character moment for Michael Burnham. And so he tells her the story of the girl who changed the universe forever with one tiny light. And we get this, in Africa 1,000 centuries ago, the first people celebrated the sun.
That's 100,000 years ago, which means these are pre-behaviorally modern humans.
Right. Right. Myths,
They would be anatomically modern, but not behaviorally modern.
Right. And at the time, there were no stars in the night sky.
How about that?
Yeah.
So no other planets, apparently. And
we meet a little girl whose name is Mary Sue.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It is obviously Michael. And we've seen this in other animations before, animated stories where the story is told and it turns out that the child in the story looks just like, the child the story is being told to is placed into the character, the role. I mean, it's a trope that you see in animations and in books, for that matter, kids' books.
And that's reasonable because kids identify with the characters in the stories.
Right.
I mean, we all identify with the characters in the stories we're watching, but kids do it in a particular way. They imagine themselves in the situation that they're hearing about, and that's fine.
Yep.
What I have as a problem here is this is backstory to a moment I don't really care about. If you're going to do a short track, I'd like to see you do it on something I'm actually interested in. And I'm not interested in the opening narration for the episode Brother.
Right. It's an odd choice. I'm not sure what this is, by the way, so far the only short track that connects to Discovery. So this season.
Direct.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, given the ending of season 2. But why are they telling, in the grand scheme, what place does this story have in Trek?
They've hinted that it's gonna play more in the future, the next season, but I mean, how does that play? We don't know.
Well, her mom is coming back, next season, I guess, because she was in the future, and now they're in the future too. So I assume we're going to be seeing Mom. One thing I wondered that also kind of was a distraction as I watched this was because I kept asking myself, is this really what I'm here for with Star Trek? And I don't think it is. I'm not really here to watch children's stories in Star Trek. But I found myself being distracted by, is this a real myth or have the writers just made this up? And it turns out, yes, it is actually a real myth. I looked it up.
Oh, interesting. Well, to kind of connect, you made 2 points, and I think, there is going to be an animated Trek series aimed at kids coming.
Yeah.
They've announced that. So this might be a precursor or laying the groundwork for that. But also, secondarily, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in discussing this. And it's only an 8-minute, animation, so it's
right.
But there are aliens that show up here that interact with this girl. Yeah. And I think that might be, Father Corey, what you were saying. This might be where it intersects with the upcoming season of Discovery.
we might meet those aliens or whatever, because like I said, this basically was a kind of a typical native religion origin story, kind of like you hear throughout history, but then they add the sci-fi element of, instead of being a god from the sky coming down in his flaming chariot, it's an alien who crash landed on Earth and needed to fix his ship instead.
Right. It's still kind of weird that how does the alien create the stars if there are stars we're already in the sky that the alien came from? I'm kind of curious. But
this is a case where I think the MST3K mantra does not apply. I can't just relax. It's just a show. I'm learning about, interestingly, I mean, I also have in my notes that learning about human myths is not really what I tune into Star Trek for. I mean, if you want to tell me about a human myth in the course of a story, like, Gilgamesh and Enkidu at Uruk, okay, fine. But it needs to be part of a bigger story. And it's not here. It's the central story.
Right. It's not. There's not much Star Trek in this Star Trek.
If it is a saving grace, though, this is just a short trek. So it's not like a full story. So that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So it turns out that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, so at night, people are forbidden to go out of the village because they think there's a giant snake monster that will eat them. And despite that, Mary Sue goes out at night to look for stuff and like a better place to be for the tribe or something. And she finds a spaceship with an octopus thing, and the octopus thing gives her a ball and tells her the first step is conquering her fear, and now she should lead her people by example. So little 8-year-old Mary Sue is going to become the leader of her people. And she takes the ball back to her people, and as the apparently old man sage priest figure is scolding her for going out at night, which I guess is the message of this, it's okay, kids, to go out at night without your parents' permission. She unleashes the stars out of the ball, and this conflicts with the opening narration of Brother, because she didn't have an alien space ball with the stars inside of it in Brother. Brother, it was much more authentic to an African myth, and it says the little girl dug her hands into the wood ash and threw the wood ash up in the sky, and it made the stars.
Well, the myth would change over the centuries or whatever to reflect people's understanding of the world as opposed to alien. I mean, I could see that there would be differences in the myth from.
Well, I think Dad is just spicing it up. It's like a historical episode of Doctor Who. You got to throw in the aliens.
Probably,
exactly.
Probably. You know, one of the things that occurred to me when the Night Beast is trying to attack her as she's out in the dark. It was very much reminiscent of when she was saved on Vulcan, when Michael went out
with the Lammatia.
Spock had to save her from the Lammatia. I thought that was a very interesting. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I thought that was interesting. So yeah, the moral of the story is the light that she was seeking was inside her all along.
And so then Mary Sue becomes queen. And because of course she does.
Yes.
Yep.
And she's not just a queen, she's a warrior queen. And we cut back to the bedroom where we have a genuinely sweet ending. I like the way, Michael's father tucks her in, and it's really sweet.
Right.
I like that part.
Yep.
And then as the stinger, we have the warrior queen attacking and defeating a sudden jump cut to the warrior queen attacking and defeating the night monster.
Yeah. Right.
And so Mary Sue triumphant.
Yes.
Just take that, everybody in the audience.
She kills the power of the night or something.
Yeah. Right. And so this also seems to conflict with the opening narration of Brother, because apparently at this point, Michael does understand the meaning of the story. But she says in the opening narration of Brother, when I first heard the story of the girl who made the stars, I wasn't ready to understand. I still don't know if I am. And I'm going, the message came through pretty loud and clear here. Conquer your fears and go to sleep.
Well, no, I think in the Brother, she was saying what she wasn't ready to understand was that there was a bigger story here about the Red Angel and all of that stuff. I think that's what you're saying in that. So I don't feel like that's a conflict here. I mean, she had the understanding as a child, and it turns out there was much more to the story than she ever thought, I suppose. I'm not going to push it too far. This is a short animation. So, so it's okay as a tale about, African, history and that sort of stuff. It's all right. But like you say, Jimmy, it doesn't really feel a lot like Star Trek. So I can take it or leave it.
One thing I was irritated about in this, though, is there was a point where, once again, it's a little kid not talking like a little kid, where the father does that whole thing about, you're afraid of being afraid more than actually being afraid. And she goes, I'm a little kid. I don't understand this thing.
Yeah,
no little kid says that.
Thank you, Winston Churchill.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's like a lot of animated stuff, or kids' books, frankly, where the kids don't sound or act like kids. They sound like adults.
That's just one of those irritations for me whenever they do that. It's like, do you actually know kids and understand them?
Yeah. That's welcome to my
since
life.
These writers are from Hollywood, maybe they don't.
That's possible. Yeah. All right, so let's put this one to bed. Haha. And
saw what you did there.
And we'll move on to the other short track that thankfully they released 2 at once. And this was also animated. By the way, these are the first 2 animated Star Trek stories since the end of the animated series, the last episode, the counterclock incident. I don't know.
Yeah, back in the 70s.
Back in the 70s.
I will say, just kind of wrap up the girl, is that's probably the first misstep, in my opinion, they've had with short treks this season.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
I wondered, and actually, Dom, I wondered how you would react to this as a father, because I know that you, I'm sure, tell bedtime stories to your kids. I thought it might speak to you in a greater way than it did me or Father Corey.
Mm-hmm. I did not have as much of a negative reaction to it as you guys did, and I think partly because I'm sort of more approximate, more used to these style. Mm-hmm. This is the sort of stuff that they make for kids, and so it didn't strike me as that. But as far as I got a warm feeling from the dad in this. I did like the dad, that connection, that relationship, that she has a strong relationship with her father. Perhaps I think in Discovery they've kind of intimated that maybe Michael was closer to her dad than she was to her mom, and that's come across. And so she's very close to her dad in this too, which I like that.
Well, I agree with you. I like the father. I think he was done well. And the story of the whole, I was just kind of meh.
Yeah, my bedtime stories are different. Last night I had Alexa read me a history of astronomy textbook. So,
and I read Tom Clancy. So
yeah. So let's talk about Ephraim and Dot, which was the other one that they released. This is also animated. In the cell style of animation. It's obviously, again, like you said, it's computer generated. But
my first note was very Tom and Jerry or Sylvester and Tweety-esque.
Yes. Yeah. It also starts as if it's a school film. They have and I don't know if modern kids have this experience. This may be another Hollywood disconnect with the experience of kids today. But when I was in school, we had film strips that would be shown to us that were of an educational nature. And there'd always be, on an old style projector, there would always be some shakiness as the film began. And so the frame would shake and you'd see some, scratches on the film, and it would frequently be in black and white, and there would be a narrator. And they start this episode just like that. Right. It's in black and white. You have a narrator. You have the same scratches on the film.
Which is totally anachronistic because it takes place in the future.
Yeah. And you have a Leonard Nimoy sound-alike as the narrator telling us about tardigrades and introducing our personified tardigrade, just like you would see a personified animal in an old school film strip. Yep. We have a tardigrade named Ephraim, which is interesting because Ephraim is a male name, just like Michael is, but this is a female tardigrade, we're told. In fact, she's pregnant and is searching for a place to lay her eggs. And so that's Ephraim's mission, is to find a good, safe place to lay eggs, which can take years to hatch.
So this kind of reminded me of the film explanation, the ride in Jurassic Park, where they have the explanation of how they've got the dinos.
Yes.
That was all animated too. So it kind of reminded me a little like that. It does quickly switch from the black and white to the color animation, and it's more apparently real time. And
Khan.
So this is definitely the original series, right? We have the original series Enterprise, Kirk, McCoy, Khan. We have a voiceover from the TOS episode Space Seed. By the way, the design of the Enterprise in this even is the original series design, not the Discovery style.
Yes.
Special effects
much
stuff.
Closer to the TOS Enterprise.
Yes. And so we have this Looney Tunes style chase through the ship because the tardigrade Ephraim is trying to get in, and a security drone, Dot 7, which we've seen in other episodes of Discovery.
And in a short trek. It was in the Ask Not episode.
Oh, right. This Dot drone comes out and zaps the tardigrade. And we, again, like we said, we have this Looney Tunes style chase through the ship. And
physical comedy.
Yes. Yep. The tardigrade sees the engines, falls in love, and lays its eggs on the engines. Then inside, and then Dot shows up, and there's more chasing. We see Sulu from the episode Naked Time with the sword, doing his D'Artagnan impression. And then we have the tardigrade. It gets thrown outside and has to chase the Enterprise via warp, apparently, and through time, through space, where we get images from. And here's we get the giant green hand in space from Who Mourns for Adonis. Yep. We have the cornucopia weapon from Doomsday Machine. We have the Tholian web. We have the Space Lincoln from Savage Curtain. We have the Reliant attacking the Enterprise in Wrath of Khan. And then we have the Klingon bird of prey and the destruction of the Enterprise in search for Spock. And that's where the chase ends, because, of course, the eggs are in this Enterprise that's about to be destroyed.
And they made a mistake, however, here on the revised or refit Enterprise. They've called it the NCC 1701A.
Right. That Enterprise
wasn't the A yet.
Yeah. That Enterprise did not exist during any of this. The eggs could not have been on the A. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I have in my notes, Star Trek can do comedy, but can it do slapstick cartoon comedy? Because we have had comedy episodes that were great, like The Trouble with Tribbles is one. Also,
and we do see some Tribbles, by the way. Yeah.
What's that?
We do see some Tribbles in this one, too.
I know. Yeah. For some reason, there are Tribbles on the ship. And that initially was disorienting to me, because we start with the Wrath of Khan scene, and I'm thinking, okay, we're late first season. And then we back up to the Naked Now. So they've got things, or the Naked Time. And so they've seemed to have scrambled the order of things. But at first I was having cognitive dissonance because we're jumping around in time. And then, and I see Tribbles, and I'm going, why are there Tribbles on this ship? We haven't hit that episode yet. And then I realized what they're doing is they set us up in the opening narration saying these eggs can take years to hatch. And so they're compressing all of these events down into a single short for us. But apparently we're meant to understand that Ephraim was in and interacting with Dot on the Enterprise and chasing the Enterprise all the way through the original series, from the first season through the third movie where the Enterprise blows up.
Right. Like something like 20 years, like in story. And perhaps tardigrades can travel through time like they travel through subspace, because it has to fly at warp, right? And through the mycelial network, maybe it's travels backwards in time.
That was part of the first season Discovery is through the mycelial network, they actually travel forward in time.
Right.
So maybe tardigrades can as well.
Yes. That's that. If you want to stretch the your head canon to fit it, you can.
That's part of the canon of the mycelial network, is it travels through both time and space. So it's not implausible. Right.
So we can assume that's what Ephraim is doing here. And while Ephraim is trying to save her eggs that are on the ship as it's being destroyed around them, Dot attacks again, and Ephraim gets thrown clear. The Enterprise explodes, self-destructs, and Ephraim thinks that sees the Enterprise crashing into the Genesis planet and thinks that the eggs are destroyed, and we're very sad. And then Dot shows up, and it has saved the little hatched tardigrades inside itself in space.
Yeah, because Dot saw them hatching and saved them.
Yes. Yeah.
We have a sweet ending, and the Leonard Nimoy narrator sound alike comes back and tells us that Ephraim is off for another amazing adventure, and we also see that Ephraim takes Dot with her on the adventure because Gilgamesh and Enkidu at Uruk.
Yeah, exactly.
Dot and Ephraim at the Genesis planet. So as it says, our new family goes boldly where no one has gone before, and they fly off again. And
we get the original series in music to go out on.
Yeah. And speaking of music, this episode is directed by Michael Giacchino, the composer, who is not just of Star Trek, but of many great films that have been out there, including The Incredibles and other stuff. So he's done Star Trek movies and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of fun. He's dipped his hand into directing and animation.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention something else about the music. When Ephraim and Dot are fighting in the warp nacelles, or in the engineering section anyway, we actually get a new arrangement of the original series fight music. Da 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 da. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was really good too. Yeah, a lot of fun. So that's that short. I like this much more than I like the other one. I mean, the other one was okay, but this was a lot of fun, even as it stretched reality.
I grew up with Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry and all those, so I loved it because it was just kind of it was as much an homage to that style of 1930s, 1940s cartoons as it was to the TOS episodes that they kind of winked at.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I certainly liked it better than The Girl Who Made the Stars. I had some cognitive dissonance. I think they could have done certain things to set it up for us a little bit better. Like one thing I found myself wondering about was why does Ephraim want the eggs? You know, she's like really keen to stay with these eggs. And I'd assume she's like, because all the narrator said at the beginning was she needs to find a spot to lay her eggs. And I thought she's like a sea turtle or a real tardigrade. She's going to lay the eggs and leave. But apparently we're meant to understand, no, she needs to nest them or something. And she needs to sit on them or stay with them or something. So she's more like an octopus or a bird. And I think they could have covered that in a line of narration in the opening to let us know she needs to stay with them. But I did enjoy it. I like little things in it. Like there's a moment where Ephraim gets thrust out into space by Dot, and Dot's looking at her out a porthole and does the live long and prosper sign. Yes. And there's a lot of fun stuff. Once I got what they were trying to do, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get what they were trying to do.
Right. I really like the inclusion of Shatner's Kirk and, you know, McCoy and Montalban as Khan, and having the actual voiceover material, you know, the actual recorded voices from the original episode that they just played. You know, they didn't get the real actors back, of course, but they just played, in which case they couldn't with DeForest Kelly, but you know what I mean?
Or
Ricardo Montalban, right. But it's nice that inclusion of that.
No,
that
that was a very great touch. I mean, just to have that connection.
The original Trek was back. This is the first new original series content that we've had since the you know, I suppose generations with Kirk, I suppose, but even before that. So a lot of fun. I did like that. So interesting. You know, in the grand scheme of things, of short treks and of where Trek is, you know, maybe you could do some criminology about why they chose to do these animations of these particular animations, why they chose to do animation at all. I'm going to guess that as they're ramping up the animated series that they are actually producing, this might have been just a sort of proof of concept, or even, you know, in a way, a pilot situation for those animation houses.
Yeah, what I thought they were going to do is, you know, give us essentially pilots for the two animated series.
Right.
But they didn't, because we know enough about the two animated series that these seem to be standalones.
Right.
But they may be proof of concept standalones.
Yes, I think that's what it is, and may in fact reflect the style of animation we're going to see in each one.
See, that was kind of my thought. Is I know we've got the lower decks, which is supposed to be the more the adult animation, and perhaps the girl is kind of, that's the style it's going to be in, and then there's supposed to be more of a, you know, like a Nickelodeon level kids one, and Ephraim and Dot is more the style that one's going to be in.
I'm thinking it's the other way around. I'm thinking that the one aimed at kids is going to be the more Pixar animation, and because that's really popular with kids, and then the
older style,
more traditional animation is going to be the one that's aimed more at adults.
And do we know? I don't remember now. Do we know where Lower Decks is set? Is it set in?
Yeah, it's set. Oh, in terms of time
and place, actually, what ship it is.
Yeah, we know the name of the ship. I think it's the Conestoga.
Okay.
And it is a ship that follows up on First Contact, so it's like a second contact ship.
Oh, I thought it was something like California or something like that. And
I think it's a California class.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Conestoga was the ship from the Enterprise episode.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And do we know what the time period is? Is it Discovery time period, Enterprise time period?
I think I've read it, but I don't remember for sure. I think it's kind of original series Discovery type period.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Just I'm curious about see how where if this was even just like even they're developing the style, the production design of what it will look like in the ships and the characters and that sort of stuff. So I'll be curious to see that. But
by the way, I sent y'all a link to the original Girl Who Made the Stars of Legend, and so we can include that link in the show notes.
Okay, we'll do that.
If listeners want to read the original for themselves.
Yep, excellent. So today we're discussing this last of the short treks called Children of Mars. and it's about 8 minutes long. And it's a bit different from the other short treks we've had, because this is not a Star Trek Discovery, Pike's Enterprise era short trek. It's a Picard era, as we get the new Picard series.
This was actually meant to be a lead into the actual Picard series.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, they stated as such that this one was going to be.
Right.
And we should probably talk about the title, Children of Mars, because I wondered what it was going to be about. I thought it might be set on Mars, but it's not. It's actually set in San Francisco, because you can see the Golden Gate Bridge out of one of the. It's about two little girls who were going to school together, and they take a physical shuttle to go to their school. So it has to be nearby. It's not, they don't transport across the planet to get to it.
Right.
And you can see the Golden Gate Bridge out of one of their windows. So we know this is set in San Francisco. Their parents both work in Starfleet, and their parents both work in Starfleet on Mars. So the two little girls are, in some sense, the children of Mars. There may be another reference, though, because another meaning in the title, because Mars is the god of war, and war breaks out, or some kind of attack happens on Mars during the course of this episode.
Yes. Oh, and that's important. We'll discuss it probably a bit. But let's talk a little bit about this. The opening, the title sequences really gives us a clue. The previous title sequences for the short treks all were in the style of Star Trek Discovery. This one is definitely in the font that they use for the titles for Star Trek The Next Generation. So it really sets it apart. There's very little dialogue by the characters.
We basically have a hi, my name is Kima. Hi, my name is Lil. My parent works here and does this. Right. And then we get a line of dialogue from each parent over video chat.
Right. Yep. And then maybe some from a teacher later on. But otherwise, not a whole lot of talking. We have music underlying it. We have a version of, or a cover of, David Bowie's "We Could Be Heroes," which is interesting.
Which has been covered by other people too, including the musical group Blondie.
Yes.
And this is like the worst version of Heroes I've ever heard.
I like the song, but this was painful to listen to.
Heroes is a great song, but this is like the joyless, slow version of it.
Right. Why? Yeah.
Well, then I also think balance-wise, it was too loud. Like, because they did have, there were other sounds, you'd hear things going on, like the shuttle taking off and announcements and stuff like that, but you could barely hear them beneath the song.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious.
That was part of to mask the dialogue and obviously to create an emotional effect, but neither of these girls are heroes.
Right.
This
that's
song
my
is
question.
Totally inappropriate.
Well, who's the heroes? That was my question. Yeah. Their parents, who apparently, perhaps, maybe have sacrificed their lives. We're not even sure of that. It's very odd, very, very strange.
Now, I mean, to be fair, it could go back to, you mentioned the second meaning of the title for the Children of War.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that, this is them becoming the heroes or whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't. They don't do anything. These girls don't do anything heroic.
Nothing we see on screen, no.
Right. It could be that there's this modern interpretation or modern use of the word hero to mean people
protagonist
or survivor.
We could be protagonists just for one day or at least 7 minutes.
Well, not even protagonists. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we use hero to refer to the survivors of terrible things, the people left behind by those who have given their lives, and they're heroes for picking up and carrying on. But we don't actually have any of that in this. I mean, we don't see.
Yeah.
The fact is, most of this story is a typical.
Day at school.
One girl bullies the other, and the other girl retaliates back and forth.
Right. So let's quick description of that. The two girls, one's human, one is not. They're classmates. They both have parents who work at Utopia Planitia shipyards on Mars. The human girl.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Because Utopia Planitia is a real place on Mars. It's in the northern hemisphere of Mars. And nevertheless, when they talk about Utopia Planitia shipyards, they only show us this orbital shipyard.
Well, they've done that from the beginning.
I know they've done it before, but here's my criticism. Why is that the Utopia Planitia shipyards when Utopia Planitia is on the surface of Mars, and this can't be an aerostationary thing that's always in orbit above Utopia Planitia because it's not on the equator.
I'll tell you why, because they've established this in secondary media, because the shipyard is in two parts: the ground base where they put things together, and then the space base where they put them together. Right. Yeah. So there's a ground base station that is the headquarters for whatever's going on in orbit, and so that's where people beam up from and transport up materials, and so they name it after the place on Earth,
on the ground.
Yeah. There's in another, I forget, maybe in the J.J. Abrams Enterprise novelization, they refer to the Boston shipyards, orbital shipyards. You know that.
Well, they've talked before too about like the San Francisco shipyards, and they aren't actually in San Francisco.
But yeah, that's where Kirk beams up from in the motion picture, and that's where the Enterprise takes off from there. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Jimmy, but yeah, it's something they've established, in it. Yeah. But in any case, the human girl resents her dad for being away.
Bad dad trope, right there.
Yep. Right, but the alien girl seems to be okay with her mom being away
because mom good and bad dad. That's the law, right?
Right, especially when it comes to the daughters apparently, and no other parent, no mom, no dad for each of these kids. I mean, we don't see the other parent. Now, maybe there is another parent that we don't see, but
they both, from what we're told on screen, which we have to assume is the dominant characteristic of their life, because neither one of them mentions a second parent, is these are both children of single absentee parents.
Right. That's the idea that we're being given anyway. So the kids are heading for the school shuttle. I had a problem with this, with this is a Enterprise Starfleet shuttle craft. This is one interplanetary shuttle. Why would you need this? This is using a Black Hawk helicopter to fly kids to school, essentially.
I believe that it's meant. This school is meant to be like a special school for children of Federation officers. So it's like a school you'd have on a military base for the staff of the base. Yeah. Except then it should be on Mars.
Just have it as a school bus.
To be fair, though, most schools that are on military bases use good old-fashioned yellow school buses. So I did like the fact, though, that shuttle was painted in school bus yellow.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And a very interesting use of the shield, the force field, to prevent kids from running up to the bus as it's taking off. But that's what happens. The human girl...
to be fair, we don't really know what civilian transport would be like then, your general typical civilian transport. Because if you want to be real nitpicky, this is TNG and Beyond era, but it's the same type of shuttle that you see on Discovery.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
so you're talking about 100-year difference there, where it's like this is the old technology shuttle that they now use for school buses instead of outfitting starships.
That's right. Yeah, I want to go to school in a World War II era tank, in an M48.
Yeah. Sure.
No, just kidding. I would love that.
They get to school and they have these video displays all over the place. One of them is playing CNN. Another is a rotating carousel that says Happy First Contact Day.
So this is the anniversary of the date that James Cameron, not James Cameron, whatever Cochran. Zefram Cochrane, played by the fellow. And so it's the anniversary of that date. The whole thing starts with an accidental bump between the girls heading to the school bus. And then there's this misunderstanding. So they get to school. I think the school looks interesting. It's an interesting look at what an imagined 25th century school would look like, and its technology and teaching style. In a very brief view,
it kind of draws in a way on some of the homeschool tech that we saw on Vulcan in season 2 of Discovery, where Spock was using his video screen and stuff. But basically what's going on here is the two girls are being alternately, I mean, they have a rivalry, it's clear. And they keep one-upping each other, although there's a moment where it looks like Lil, the human girl, is trying to bond with Kima, the other girl.
Right.
But then it ends up getting the other girl in trouble. So maybe that was a setup.
Right.
And it ends up with the two of them coming to blows in front of a group of lockers.
You get this idea that they're acting out their anger over their absentee parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is another maybe aspect of Children of Mars, Children of War, is their aggressiveness in their behavior.
And then the plot point occurs, which is something comes on the something happens on Mars. There's an attack. The carousel with the rotating graphic says this is an emergency alert, and CNN is on, and they're playing a video about rogue synths attack Mars, 3,000 estimated dead. And the synths is the most interesting part of this. These apparently are synthetic beings. It harks back to Picard's line from Measure of a Man that eventually someone is going to start trying to make more data.
Well, this
will succeed.
This is the question that all the fans have kind of been talking about this past weekend over, since this got released, which is this upends everything we've been thinking about what Picard is about. Because most people, I think, had been on the idea that Picard is about Starfleet somehow co-opting the Borg technology or getting a hold of a bunch of Borg and deprogramming them somehow. But maybe it's not. Maybe some people think maybe this is about somebody creating a bunch of datas that get out of control.
Which we've seen in some of the previews of these guys that look like another, not Data exactly, but another kind of Soong type android. And so I'm expecting Borg and Romulans and Soong type androids to factor bigly in this.
Yeah.
So the only other thought I had where synth could also be is, of course, you go back to Voyager and we have, photons be free and the whole thing with holograms. Could synths also be holographic beings?
Yeah,
maybe
possible. Another possibility, and that what we saw those would you thought might be androids could actually be holograms instead,
right? Because using the portable holo generator technology that the Doctor had on Voyager, that's possible. And then we get a headline that says Admiral Picard reacts to Mars attack.
Right, and we see him up on CNN, and that's it. And then the girls grab each other by the hand, so we have some kind of reconciliation between them. And once again, Gilgamesh and Enkidu at Uruk.
Right, the attack brings them together in their fear and anger.
Yeah,
in grief, because the assumption is are their parents among the 3,000 dead?
Right.
The interesting thing about this, the headline, some people have mentioned, well, if it says he's Admiral Picard, what we know of the TV show is that Picard has been retired from Starfleet, so therefore this must take place when he was still an admiral.
Before.
But of course, we know at least from contemporary, what our present day, once you're an admiral, you're always an admiral, or a general. You're always referred to by your title.
You retain the title as an honorific even when you're retired. Yep. However, he is in uniform. When he's up on the screen, and in some of the trailers for the Picard series, we have him flashing back to this dramatic attack on Mars.
Yeah,
so I'm guessing that this is set at the time he left Starfleet.
Right.
Which kind of an interesting point. Right now they've released 2 of the 3 issues of the Picard Countdown comic.
Yep. Which is also a prequel
set at that time.
Yeah.
And one thing we see in that is that Geordi LaForge is in charge of Utopia Planitia at the time of the comic. He's helping to supervise the building of the Romulan
evacuation fleet.
Evacuation fleet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this my speculation is that maybe the two are connected there too. Like that this is similar time frame that as Utopia Planitia, again, speculation on my part, 3rd issue hasn't come out yet. But the comic book is supposed to be leading to the decision that Picard made to leave Starfleet.
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of how they put it. So I'm wondering if these are concurrent time frames and the 3rd episode is going to show the attack.
And maybe something bad happening to Geordi, which is, I think is possible.
And that's in speculation there. Was he killed? Was he hurt? Whatever. Because we haven't heard anything of Geordi LaForge returning for the Picard series.
Right.
Yeah. I doubt he was killed.
Okay. It would be,
but he may have well been there during the attack.
It would be tragic, given his relationship with Data as a friend, to have creatures like Data, to kill him. It's interesting.
It's kind of interesting. I think that these 2 separate media could actually be interconnected, telling the same story from different views.
One other thing that someone pointed out was remember when Lore, Data's brother, was running the Rogue Borg. What was it? What was that called?
Descent,
the two-parter Descent. And after that, Hugh, the Borg who was freed, was given control of those freed Borg at that point. And we have heard that Hugh,
isn't quite the right word, but he effectively became their leader.
I'm sorry, yes, leadership. And
we know Hugh is back in the Picard series.
Exactly. Right. So, and then we've got this girl. We don't know who she is, but she seems to be powerful, that Picard feels this need to help and take care of. And so there's lots of speculation. Right. Who is she? Is she Picard's daughter? Is she a Borg that's been freed? Because we know 7 of 9 is in the new series. Or maybe, as I'm thinking, is maybe she's one of these synths, a more advanced version of them.
So we'll have a lot of these questions answered really soon because this Picard series is debuting.
Right.
How did we feel about this short trek taken in and of itself, regardless of what it sets us up for? What did we think about it as a self-contained entity? Until
we got that last bit, the attack on Mars, I was kind of like, what's the point of this? Why are we seeing this?
Yeah.
I'm still left wondering.
I wrote down seemingly typical bully story.
After school special.
Yeah. I was like, meh.
Yeah.
And especially with the joyless, inappropriate heroes. I mean, I like that song, and it's inappropriate and it's joyless here.
Yeah. I did like the principal being a Vulcan. Because they had that one scene there where it's behind him and he's just in shadow with the ears.
But. Yes, he's the very stern headmaster, of course. Yeah, like apart from that, and I'm still kind of left wondering, what is the connection of this story to whatever? Like, why is this, like, what is the connection of this to anything besides itself? It doesn't connect to any of the characters besides that one brief reference, which is they are somehow connected to the attack on Mars that is at the center of whatever Picard series is.
We could maybe meet these characters as adults in the Picard series, but so this is like their secret origin story, but it's not that interesting of a secret origin story. I think they could have done so much more with this and done it with dialogue instead of, having this whole thing be silent under the joyless music.
Right. Right.
And I wonder, honestly, if other than the actual attack on Mars, if there is going to be any connection.
Yeah, there may not.
I could see them they literally they wanted to use it as the platform to show the attack on Mars, but they had to put this whole story to build up to that point.
Right. Without showing making a story about the attack on Mars. Like, if they could have set this in the planet, in the shipyard and then have things happen around them.
And actually, kind of telling basically a 9/11 story.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not at all.
9/11 is a normal day. Everything was going fine. All of a sudden, smack.
Yeah. I would have to say, looking back at all of the short treks from this season, the best is definitely The Trouble with Edward. The animated one, the Lilo and Stitch one. I forget what it's called. The two. That one was really good. This one, it's not objectionable, but it just kind of falls flat for me.
Yeah, I liked Q&A. I liked Q&A.
Was good.
Oh yes.
The one where Picard is gaslighting the lady to determine if she can be a junior engineering intern is
Captain Pike.
Pike. Yeah. Sorry. Is that one's? I mean, I like seeing Pike, but that one's just kind of has logic problems.
Yeah. Right.
Q&A was fun, and the Lilo and Stitch one was fun. Did not like the girl who made the stars.
Yeah.
Ephraim did not like this one.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the same way. I liked Edward. I liked Q&A.
Edward was fun.
Yeah, I liked the Dot and Ephraim. Was kind of like I said, man on the one about Pike. It was the girls with the stars, and then this one was I
was happy we got Pike. I enjoyed seeing Pike on screen.
Number one and Pike both.
Yes. One bit of news, speaking of Picard, is that it's been picked up for a second season before they've even aired the first episode, which seems to be de rigueur for streaming series nowadays.
I think they also announced Discovery got season 4.
Already? Okay. Well,
I think I just saw that yesterday. So I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think they did announce that season 4 Discovery's been picked up as well.
It would be nice if they told us when season 3 was coming, but that's just for me.
After Picard.
Yeah. I know.
This year.
Yeah. Some point this year. All right. Well, that's good news. We hope you've enjoyed this special episode of The Secrets of Star Trek. What did you think of this season of Short Treks? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send us an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the very first episode of the brand new Star Trek series Picard. Don't miss this, folks. This is going to be a lot of fun. Until then, thank you to Father Corey Stika and Jimmy Aiken for joining me in sharing the secrets of Star Trek. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest, and remember, make it so.